afternoon, fine folks. Welcome to Maverick Baking and welcome to a big, juicy bumper Q&A video. It's been, I think, about over a year since I last filmed one of these, and because there are so many of you lovely new folks here, it only felt right to introduce ourselves a bit more, to get to know each other a bit better. So I asked you guys, both on Instagram and here on YouTube, to ask me anything. And you did. You guys provided a whole host of very juicy questions, of which we are going to get into today. To keep things kind of nice and organized, I'm going to have the questions flash up on the screen so you can, click and skip around as much as you like. And I'm also going to kind of do this in 3 different sections. We're going to have some nice personal life questions. We're then going to have some questions about food and some questions all about Italy and life in Italy. So you guys can pick and choose what you want to listen to, what you're interested in, and let's get into it. But let's not waste any time getting into the personal questions. Let's talk about life. Someone sent in the very juicy question asking me if I would ever have plastic surgery and what my stance is in general on plastic surgery. It has to be said that for the majority of my adult life, I have been skint, and certainly far too skint to consider even the concept of plastic surgery. At the moment, I'm 27. I'm still definitely very young in the face. So, maybe if this was to be asked of me again in 10 years, in 20 years, I might change my tune. But at the moment, it's something I've never considered. Touching my nose, my eyes, my lips, anything. Botox, I've yet to see anyone look good with it. Fillers terrify me. I think it does more damage than good, personally speaking, and it's not something I'm particularly interested in. Someone then asked, are you a morning or a night person? I am, unfortunately, both. Someone asked what kind of exercise I do. Honestly, nothing scheduled, basically. I've never been into sports. I've always hated exercise of all sorts other than dancing and walking, basically. I walk a lot in terms of getting to and from work, getting to and from supermarket and anywhere we need to go because we don't have a car here in Italy. I also work in a job that requires being on my feet for at least 5 hours a day. So I have no kind of scheduled exercise, but I'm very active. That makes sense. Someone asked my favorite color, and I need not say anything more than yellow, always. Someone asked, do I have any pets? Sadly, we don't. We technically shouldn't in the apartment that we live in, and Francesco and I work a lot, both at home, but mostly away from home. And I don't think for either a cat or a dog or anything smaller that it would be very fair on them. I would absolutely love to have a dog and a cat and various other things, but it's not the time at the moment. Someone asked if I want kids. This is a huge question. I've been asking myself forever and I still don't have an answer to that. Someone just said hair secrets. And someone else asked more specifically for products, styling and cutting of it. I have been cutting my own hair for 2 years. I use YouTube tutorials to cut my hair, and the kind of layering long hair video from Pickup Lines is especially helpful, and I just cut it however I feel like it. Sometimes a tiny bit, sometimes this time, for example, slightly more feathered kind of vibe going on, but I cut my own hair. In terms of products, the only ones I use are either the Inkey List Curl Cream after I come out of the shower, or the Sephora Moringa Hair Oil when I come out of the shower. That's it, just shampoo and conditioner otherwise. Not the cheapest, but not the super expensive stuff either. And in terms of styling, I do nothing. The waves and the curls come from air drying because I don't use straighteners, curlers, or I also don't own a hair dryer, so everything is, a little bit of moisturization plus the air plus my mother's genes, basically. Someone asked what gave me the courage, as they said, to leave the legal path, the legal career path that I was on. I studied law for 4 years. I did a diploma in professional legal practice afterwards and 2 years of legal training at a law firm in Scotland. And I kind of knew very early on that it wasn't what I was best placed to do. It's interesting, it's definitely interesting, and it's a very prestigious and impressive career path to get into, but it's not me at the moment, at least. And I knew that kind of from the first step, which is a strange way to decide to live your life. And a few things happened during those 7 years, Things put life into perspective, things like COVID put life into perspective. Some deaths of people close to me put things into perspective, and as cheesy and Hollywood as it kind of sounds, you know, I'm aware that I do not have an eternity to be alive on this planet, and that things can be cut short at any time. And while that doesn't, you know, rationalize all kinds of decision making, it's something that spurred me to, you know, think, okay, you've achieved what you wanted to achieve, you have the title, you've done the work, and you know that it's not what you want to do. Let go and do something else. Have the balls to tell people that, have the balls to start from step one again. A couple of questions related to my issues related to food when I was younger. If you haven't kind of heard any about that, I spoke about it in depth in a couple of episodes of the Sweet Nothings podcast, which I share here on the channel, and it's also available on all of your favorite podcast platforms. The first was someone asked if I was recovering from an ED. I consider myself recovered, having survived the eating disorders that I had, definitely, but at the moment I don't consider myself in recovery because I've been in a good place for, I would say, 2 to 3 years now. Someone asked, how did you achieve food freedom? As I said, through a lot of painful self-reflection and trying things, and a lot of time talking, a lot of thinking, a lot of trial and error, a lot of, you know, learning to cook, a lot of understanding my body. It's not something you can fix quickly. You know, you can't become a genius overnight, you can't become a millionaire overnight, you can't become a professional athlete overnight. These things take time and they take dedication and they take a lot of accountability in yourself as well, which is very difficult when one side of your brain is difficult to live with. That's the only way I could kind of rationalize that. Slightly more lightheartedly, someone asked me what's my favorite country I've ever visited, and unsurprisingly, it's Italy. I decided to move myself here, so it's definitely maybe an obvious answer. Someone then asked which country is top of my travel bucket list. At the moment, though it's not particularly far and adventurous from this part of the world, Spain is there. Italians love Spain. Everyone here raves about Madrid and Barcelona. You know, I have a friend who has traveled a lot more kind of around the north of Spain, and it's just something I've never really had the chance to do. And it's also the next language I would like to learn, if possible. So it's probably, you know, not the most out there place, but it's definitely top of my list at the moment. Someone asked, what music do you listen to? I don't want to be one of those people who's like, oh, I listen to everything, but I will listen to anything and everything. The past couple of years, I've been listening to a lot more kind of Italian pop music, as well as Italian rap, Italian trap as well, to help kind of drill the language and the pronunciation into my head. Usually what I reach for is alternative, metalcore, punk, your pop punk, your emo, any kind of rock music is usually top of my list, but I will listen to anything. Someone asked, is your boyfriend Italian or Scottish? Francesco is very much Italian, but with a little bit of Scottish flavour to him. He lived there for about 9 or 10 years, and when he speaks English, especially with some words, he definitely has the influence of, you know, my part of the world's accent, which is nice and kind of funny to hear sometimes, but my husband is Italian. Someone asked, how did we meet? We met in one of the little restaurants he owned at the time in 2019, and we hit it off quite quickly, I would say. You know, we're both quite ambitious people, we're both very independent, and we bonded a lot over our love of food, and it was very much a right place at the right time kind of thing. Someone asked, are you vegan? I am not. Someone then asked, have you ever considered becoming vegetarian or vegan? My kind of day-to-day life is mostly vegetarian, I would say. Vegetarian food is the kind of thing I crave the most and that I eat the most. You know, meat is something I absolutely adore and I enjoy cooking it. I enjoy eating it. It's just that I enjoy eating cheese, vegetables, and starches more than meat, personally. I have gone vegan for periods of my life. I did veganuary for a couple of years. I also went vegan, I think one autumn a few years before that. My body does not react particularly well to being vegan more than a few weeks at a time. I start to, you know, it's probably more an issue with me not getting the right B vitamins in, but my body definitely works well as vegetarian, and with a little bit of meat and fish. It doesn't do particularly well with a vegan lifestyle entirely. just personally speaking. Someone asked, would you like to live somewhere other than the UK or Italy? It's something I haven't put a huge amount of thought towards. Very recently, we considered moving to Canada. Before we considered moving to Italy, we were very, very drawn by the idea of moving to Vancouver, but various things kind of, changed our minds. It's an incredibly expensive city. It's an incredibly far away place from both of our roots and our families and our kind of security, which can be good, but can also be terrifying. Canada is probably the first country I would have to put at the top of that kind of response. Someone asked, would you like to open a bakery or have a professional career around cooking or baking? Yes. Basically, in short. Obviously, it's not something super easy in terms of opening your own. It's something that requires a lot of time, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of money. But in terms of having, a career dedicated to food, to baking, to anything like that, yes, absolutely. It's part of the reason that we chose Italy as somewhere to live, because it's one of the best places in the world to want to work in food. And finally, in terms of live questions, someone asked, what's the main message you want to send out with your account or your channel? While it wasn't always clear to me at the start, because, I initially wanted to just be a recipe channel, and then there was kind of some food reviews, and then my personality started coming out a bit more. The love and the joy of food and of eating is the main thing I want to put out there, with a little bit of emphasis on, people who are recovering from an eating disorder, or like me, who have recovered and have had a past with that kind of thing, or for people who are struggling with body image, but also for people who are just starting to understand that food doesn't have to be something that's scary, or something that they don't know how to make, or something that is intimidating or too expensive. I would like to send the message to people that food doesn't just have to be something you shove down your throat a couple of times a day. It can also be a source of immense and affordable joy. Let's get into some food questions. So the first of the food questions I received from you lovely folks is, what got you into baking? My parents, when I was a teenager, they kind of did up their kitchen because it was kind of old, and they got a new oven. And with this new oven came one of these little kind of user manuals, these instruction manuals that had some recipes in the back. And one of the recipes was for a kind of classic Victoria sponge. I had never baked at home before. My family weren't big cooks or bakers. One afternoon, I just wanted to try making a Victoria sponge because we had this shiny new oven, and what came out of the oven was like a religious experience for me. Not because I had some kind of, hand of God that helped me make this cake, but I had just never had home-baked cake like that before. And I was amazed that it could taste that fresh, that good, And then, of course, you naturally kind of make some other cakes, some biscuits, some cookies, some brownies, and it never stopped, basically. And they still had the same oven. Someone asked, what part of baking do you love the most? I love this question. Though it has quite a selfish main answer, being the eating. I have an absolutely insatiable sweet tooth. I have had ever since I was a kid, and baking your own cake is the best way to ensure that there is always something to satiate said insatiable sweet tooth. But aside from that, the best part about baking is what it can bring to other people. I know it probably sounds a little bit cheesy, but bringing homemade cake to a barbecue, to the office, to a dinner party, anything like that is just something that can really brighten people's day. Also getting to play around with flavor combinations and, the opportunity to fail at baking is a bit less kind of dramatic than if you were failing at making lunch or failing at making dinner, when, you would have 2 to 5 people relying on you. If you fail at making a cake, it's usually still something kind of tasty at the end, and it's not what someone's relying on as their main source of sustenance too. Someone asked, in your What I Eat in a Day videos, do you actually film everything? And the honest answer is yes. If there's ever anything I don't film, it's because I genuinely forgot, and I will say it in the video. There'll be times when I say, oh, I had some biscuits that I forgot to film, or I had something that I forgot to film, but otherwise I do film it. As you can see, they're not the kind of highest quality videos. I just shoot them really quickly, a couple of seconds on my phone camera, and I film everything. Someone asked, is there a food you don't like? And the answer is yes. There's a few things, very, very few things, but a few things that I do not like at all. The first is fresh coriander leaves. And I really, really genuinely do wish I enjoyed them because they're so pretty and they have such a unique flavor. But I'm one of those people who just find that they taste like soap and I can't stand them. Which, when you love Thai food and, you know, Mexican food and Indian food, when you see these leaves being used, it's a bit sad that that is a bit of a limiter, but unfortunately, I'm not a fan. Otherwise, the only other things that really kind of grate on me are licorice sweets. But following foods I don't like, we have a real run through of favorites. So let me just kind of speed run through these. My favorite comfort food, again, unsurprisingly, is probably just chocolate. I reach for it at any time of day, whether it's white milk, dark, cheap or expensive. It comforts me without fail and I love it. Favorite childhood food or food with special memory attached is, probably my mum's chicken casserole. Favorite food to cook or bake is probably cookies. Cookies or brownies, because they are as good to eat as they are to cook and they're really, really low effort for how good the result is. Someone asked favorite chocolate. That is one that I can and will make a whole separate video on, but I'd probably say, to kind of speed run it, on the cheaper end of the scale, Snickers, Kinder Bueno, or the Novi milk chocolate here in Italy. On the more expensive end of the scale, anything produced by Hogarth, anything produced by Om Nom, or anything produced by Pump Street Bakery have been my kind of top craft chocolate. My favourite pasta shape is rigatoni. I think it's absolutely elite in the way that it holds shape, how easy it is to eat and to scoop up, and I think it's beautiful on a plate too. Favourite tipple, depends on the occasion. I'm usually a gin girl. If we're talking about beer, it's always something dark like a stout or a porter. And in terms of wine, I usually prefer white or Prosecco. Someone asked, when did you discover your love for chocolate? It's always been there. Ever since I was a kid. Again, whether it's milk, white, dark chocolate, nutty chocolate, fruity chocolate, I have always loved it, and I think I always will love it. Someone asked, have you ever tried intermittent fasting and what do you think about it? I have never tried it, and I'll be completely honest, because someone's also asked what I think about it. I think it's a diet in disguise, the same way that the grapefruit diet is a diet, the same way that the Atkins or keto or South Beach, the way that any of these things are diets, and they usually all come down to calorie restriction in one way or another. Intermittent fasting, some people claim that it has benefits, you know, just outside of weight loss in terms of, you know, one's metabolism and other things. I don't know about that, and I know that that isn't the primary goal. The primary goal people do intermittent fasting is for at least weight management, if not weight loss. Basically, if you're going to be eating for fewer hours of the day, you're naturally going to be eating less food. For some people, eating healthier or eating in a more balanced way requires rules like that. You know, like they only eat between like 11 a.m. and 6 p.m., sometimes even shorter window. I don't think it's realistic for everyone. I don't think it's healthy or safe for everyone, both physically and mentally. And it's something I would never try. I work shifts. It's something that would never fit in my lifestyle, and I have no interest in fitting it into. Someone sent in tips on stopping calorie counting and eating intuitively instead. Intuitive eating is not kind of something you can just implement overnight. You know, the idea is incredibly simple, like ridiculously simple, but it's not easy. Maths and formulas and rules and maths are incredibly simple, but they aren't easy to understand and to put into practice. Intuitive eating requires understanding yourself, physically and mentally. It requires understanding why you eat, when you do, what you do, where you do, why you do, how you do. It also can vary very much from person to person, depending on how you work, how much you sleep, where you are in the world, what season it is. You know, intuitive eating, for example, in the summertime, for me here in Italy, was very, very little food, but shitloads of liquids and ice cream, basically. You know, most days my diet was like salad, fruit, cheese, ice cream and liquids. It was a ridiculous diet. Whereas in the winter, I want starch, I want meat, I want spices, I want heavy flavors that, you know, will not only warm me up, but fill me up too. Stopping calorie counting is something I would obviously recommend unless it's something that's been medically recommended to you. Delete the fitness apps. Don't look at the food packaging. If you can, just don't look at it. It won't make you feel any better. Just don't look at it. You know, obviously if you need to know how to cook something, look at it then, but try your best to get out of the habit of checking things before you eat them. If you feel like you're hungry enough to eat a packet of crackers, eat the packet of crackers. If you feel like you want something sweet, eat something sweet. And if what you ate wasn't enough, have some more. You know, it's, like I say, it's an incredibly simple concept, but it isn't easy. It took me years to wrap my head around it and to get my body used to it. But there are some days when you don't want to eat the same amount everyone else is eating at 7 p.m. at dinner time. Or there's some days when you don't want breakfast because you just feel a little bit nauseous for some reason. Or there's some days when for lunch you feel like you could eat 7 courses because you worked so much the day before and you've been really stressed recently. It's difficult to get your head around, and it's difficult not to feel guilty or confused about what it is that you're doing. But our bodies send us messages for a reason. Our bodies let us know when we're tired. Our bodies let us know when we're thirsty. We should trust that it knows when it's hungry or when it wants something too, you know? Someone asked if you could eat one baked good for the rest of your life, what it would be, and it would be cookies. Again, for me, the kind of soft, chewy chocolate chip style, you know, bakery style, American style cookies, absolutely. I could eat them 3 times a day, every single day, and I'd be very, very happy. And finally, along the kind of intuitive eating line, someone asked, if you feel like you have eaten too much and you feel like you don't want to eat anymore, is it good to skip meals? Now, that last part, this could just be the wording and me being pedantic about it. But in general, it's not good to skip meals. We eat regularly because we need to eat regularly. But obviously, if, you know, it's a Sunday and you're having lunch with your family and you have like 3 courses, or you say you have 2 big courses, you have, you know, lots of meat and vegetables and potatoes, or you eat a big bowl of pasta or something with lots of rice and lots of soup or something, and then you have a dessert or another course and you feel really full, it's likely you'll be fine up until bedtime to not have any dinner, you know, like a solid meal, have a snack, have a little sweet treat, have something, that's fine. You know, there are days, for example, where I will have a big breakfast and eat it quite late in the morning, so I don't really need lunch. I'll maybe have some crisps or, you know, some chocolate to tide me over to dinner time. So, you know, there are days when if you feel like you have eaten a lot and you physically aren't hungry, for the same reasons that intuitive eating is recommended for knowing when to eat, it's also for knowing when not to eat if you don't want to feel worse. The only thing I wouldn't recommend is, for example, if you're being driven by guilt instead. Now, obviously, it can be difficult to know when you're being driven by guilt because our brains are very complicated things. But say, for example, you went out for dinner last night, you had 3 courses, you went somewhere nice, or you went to McDonald's and you had, you know, something big and large and you had a McFlurry afterwards and, you know, a huge fizzy drink as well. And the next morning you just feel kind of guilty about what you ate the night before. In those cases, I wouldn't recommend skipping breakfast. Unless you physically do not feel like you can hold food down or you're hungover, that's a different matter. I've been there too. But in terms of skipping meals, I'd say if it's during the same day and you genuinely still feel full, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. It happens to all of us. But if it's a kind of guilt-driven thing because you aren't happy or you feel bad or guilty or ashamed of what you ate the day before, don't skip meals. Just carry on. It's just another day. E allora ragazzi, domande sull'Italia e la vita in Italia. The first question I received from you guys, from a fellow Scot, I believe, was why did you leave Scotland? This is a whole video in itself, really. I was in a career path that I didn't feel hugely passionate about. I was in a city that I felt nothing but complete and utter indifference towards. All of my friends were moving away to other cities further south in Scotland and, you know, down to England. And we had just spent, you know, the best chunk of 2 years either locked up indoors or struggling to see a way out of the global situation that was going on. And it had some really, really big effects on Francesco and I, as it did on a lot of people, we needed a change. We wanted a change, and Italy was what we landed on. Someone similarly asked, do you miss Scotland or something about it? I do from time to time. I have no personal disdain towards Scotland. You know, I don't feel like I ran away from Scotland at all. I of course miss my friends that are still there. I miss my family every single day. I miss the sense of humor. I miss tea culture. I miss our excessive politeness and apologizing for things that even we didn't do sometimes. I miss the people more than the place, if that makes sense. Someone asked along similar lines, which Scottish foods do you miss? And honestly, this list isn't very long. I miss strawberries. Now, other parts of the world do have strawberries, but strawberries and also raspberries in Scotland, because of our climate, even if the season is really, really short, they're not the cheapest fruit, but they're still a hell of a lot cheaper than they are here in Italy. And I've yet to find strawberries here in Italy that have that same smell and taste that the ones in Scotland do. Same with raspberries, which are my favourite fruit. They're either really expensive or hard to find here, or they're just not the same. Other Scottish foods like shortbread and, you know, every tatty-based dish you can either find or make here in Italy, so it's not too big a deal. The only thing that is kind of really different, which sounds weird, is like the sausages here. I've seen an Irish creator who lives in Italy as well say this, that like, obviously you can get sausages in Italy, but they all have a very specific purpose. Whereas in the UK, we have sausages that we eat. You know, we grill or roast them or fry them, and we eat them as they are. They're really high meat content. They don't have too much other kind of like flavor or anything added to them. And it's the kind of thing that we eat with, you know, mashed tatties or in a sandwich or something like that. And that sort of generic sausage, I've yet to find it here in the same flavor or for the same purpose, but that's, you know, I only think about it maybe once every 2 months, so I don't miss it too much. Someone asked, do you ever regret leaving Scotland for Italy? And the answer is absolutely not. You learn so much and humble yourself so much moving abroad and just starting from scratch, that if you ever have the chance to do it, even if you'll be, as we were, skint at the beginning, it's so worth it. It is so absolutely worth it to learn new things every day, to push yourself beyond what you thought you could do, and to feel proud when you accomplish something in a completely foreign place. I love where we live. I love my life here, and the actual moving process is something I will never regret, even if we don't stay here forever. Someone asked the best thing about living in Italy, and this is a really obvious but honest answer, and it's the food. Everything is better quality than it is in Scotland. So much more stuff grows here, so there's naturally a better social understanding of seasonality and a better appreciation for ingredients. It's, you know, Italy's food culture has the reputation it has for a reason, and it is undoubtedly the best thing about living here. Someone then asked, are you fluent in Italian, and if so, how was the learning process? Il processo era e ancora difficile. Quindi sì, ho fatto tanto fatica onestamente. Al momento sto lavorando a Venezia, quindi ogni giorno devo parlare in italiano con clienti, con i miei colleghi, e quindi così diventa un po' più, non facile, ma un po' più naturale, un po' più normale di ascoltare, parlare in italiano. Ma non ho studiato la lingua, non ho fatto lezioni, neanche quelli informali con altre persone, cioè altri stranieri, eccetera. Ho imparato completamente da sola, da Duolingo, da Francesco un po', da guardare TV in italiano, ascoltare musica italiana. Però, dopo 1 anno e mezzo, adesso mi sento abbastanza sicura quando parlo. Posso vivere una vita indipendente. Chiaramente devo imparare di più e sto imparando ogni giorno, però per adesso ci sto. Someone asked, how was the moving process? Hard, not gonna lie. And you know, in terms of finances, we were very, very fortunate. Francesco has family here who were incredibly generous by letting us stay with them for the first few months, and they really helped us out with, you know, finding things and, you know, moving our stuff into the apartment. Francesco's friends were incredibly helpful with that as well, and still are. But in terms of paperwork, in terms of, you know, everything you need to get in order, in terms of realizing that, you're doing it for real. The moving process is difficult, absolutely. And as the person who moved here without a kind of foundation or the same foundation that Francesco had, it's definitely harder on the person in that situation than it is on the other, you know? And we then swiftly move on to the biggest culture shocks, or meglio, cose che mi fanno incazzare in Italia. This is always something difficult to speak about because I am incredibly grateful for everything this country has given me in just over a year. You know, in terms of the people, in terms of the culture, in terms of even being allowed to be here and live here and work here. Obviously, can't complain about that. But there are always things when you move to a new place that you realize could use some work. Obviously, some things I've discovered here in terms of the work culture, not working in general, obviously, but work culture here is a bit more chill. That's nice. People don't kind of drink themselves to death as often as they do where I'm from. People are healthier by nature, they look after themselves. The culture of the family is a bit more kind of caring and all-inclusive here. Però, cosa mi fanno incazzare? La brutta figura. By that, I mean bad manners. And of course, this is not across the board. This is a generalization I have to make to answer this question. But being from the UK, I'm aware that we have an incredibly, almost unrealistic standard of good manners. By that, I don't mean, you know, that we're the friendliest or the best people in the world. Far from it. We're from a nation of people that say sorry before we've even done the thing wrong. We always say our please and thank yous. We put a big emphasis on, you know, order and keeping things in line. For example, the concept of a queue, the concept of, you know, queuing for something and waiting your turn and people being in a correct first come first served order is very alien here. And it's something that in me and in other Brits is so, you know, stitched into our being that I cannot understand how people struggle with it. But they do. Whether you're in the post office, whether you're in a bar, whether you're queuing to buy gelato, whether you're doing, you know, no matter where you are, people here are not as kind of innately happy to wait behind someone else, even if they have no reason to not be happy to wait behind someone else. I really struggle with it. You know, you'll see people, they won't even form a queue. It doesn't happen everywhere and it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens. And it's something that if it happened in Scotland, there would be an issue, but it wouldn't happen in Scotland. Do you know what I mean? This is something so small, but it drives me nuts. Other things that drive me insane about Italy as a foreigner are the bureaucracy. Dear God in heaven. And for everything. It's not just, you know, I thought maybe the moving process and being an immigrant, all of the paperwork I would need would be bureaucratic. That's fine. I'm the one that's new here. It's everything. It's the amount of things you have to sign to have even the most basic of like minimum wage jobs. Though minimum wage doesn't exist here. The kind of thing you have to do to get your driving license. The way that leases on apartments work here. The amount of paperwork to do anything, basically. It's just so, running a business here seems like a maze on a daily basis. It's really complicated. I've never known a place to make and also break all of the rules all the time, every day, you know? Italians will understand, or anyone else who's ever lived here will understand, but everything's so needlessly complicated. Driving is one. Driving and just the roads in general, you know, there's a real lack of patience compared to what I'm used to back home. A lack of, again, the kind of respect and just calmness that we give each other. Even in big cities in the UK, it's much more of a pleasure to drive in than any big city here. Or even walking near a road is stressful here. You're something like twice as likely to get into an accident here on the roads. And if you're here for 2 days as a Brit, you'll look around and you'll understand why that is the case. It's just... And finally, someone asked, are you planning to stay long-term in Italy? I am, and have always been, someone who doesn't look beyond the end of my nose, and that is something I need to change, but we don't know, basically. Francesco and I have spoken a lot about this being a kind of 5-year thing, or that after 5 years we'll maybe take stock of where we are. I'm 27 at the moment, so, you know, I'm at a point where my whole life is still ahead of me, but equally, I know that if I wanted, for example, if we wanted to have children, we would need to think about something a bit more secure and permanent. But at the moment, we're planning to be here for at least another 4 years. I certainly wouldn't have qualms about being here even longer than that, but equally it depends very much on business, on work, on, I guess, the political situation, the economic situation. It depends on a lot of things. But for the moment, I would definitely like to keep myself here for a few years to come, absolutely. Ma basta. Those are all of the questions I have in the Italy section, and therefore in today's Q&A video. Thank you guys so much for all of your questions. I hope we've gotten to know each other a little bit better. I hope you enjoyed this, or you've been able to find out some things that you wanted to know. But I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget you can always support the channel via Patreon. The link is in the description box below. Don't forget to tap that subscribe button if you haven't already. Find me on social media at Maverick Baking everywhere, and that's it for today. Thanks so much, and I'll see you for the next one.